Tunde Adewale was a bright and promising young man, a 400-level civil engineering student at the University of Lagos. He was the pride and joy of his mother, Iyatunde. She had raised him alone since the death of her husband many years ago. Life had not been easy, but she worked hard as a petty trader, selling tomatoes and pepper at the Boundary Market in Ajegunle, just to see her son succeed. Tunde had big dreams. He wanted to become a top engineer, build houses, roads and bridges, and most importantly, give his mother a better life. Mama, one day you will live in a house with running water and you will never have to sell tomatoes again. He always told her. Those words gave Iyatunde hope and she prayed every day for her son's success. On that fateful night, everything changed. Tunde had gone to watch the UEFA Champions League final between Real Madrid and Barcelona at a local viewing center. The match was intense and it ended late, close to midnight. As he walked home, still excited about the game, he had no idea that danger was lurking ahead. That night, a group of policemen were on an illegal patrol. They were not looking for criminals. They were looking for young men they could harass and extort money from. Amongst them were Sergeant Alade, Corporal Okoro, Inspector Bala, Constable James and their leader, ASP Danladi. These men were well known in Ajegunle. They were feared because they often arrested innocent people and only released them after collecting huge sums of money. Tunde was walking down the street when the police van suddenly stopped in front of him. The officers jumped out, their faces hard and unfriendly. "Hey you, stop there," Sergeant Alade barked. Tunde froze. "Good evening, sirs. Where are you coming from?" Inspector Bala asked, stepping closer. "I just finished watching a football match," Tunde replied, trying to stay calm. "Football match?" Corporal Okoro scoffed. "Do you think we are fools?" Tunde frowned. "I am a student. I can show you my ID card." Before he could reach out into his pocket, a heavy slap had landed on his face. His head spun and he staggered back in shock. "Bring your phone," Constable James demanded. Tunde hesitated. He had heard how these policemen collected people's phones and never returned them. "I did nothing wrong," he protested. "Are you resisting arrest?" ASP Danladi growled. "You must be a thief." "No, I am not a thief. I am a student." But the officers had already made up their minds. They descended on him, beating him mercilessly. Tunde cried out, begging them to stop, but they did not listen. They kicked, punched, and hit him with their batons until he stopped moving. His body lay lifeless. One of the officers bent down and checked his pulse. Silence fell among them. "He is dead," Inspector Bala whispered in horror. ASP Danladi stepped back. "We have to leave now." Without another word, they jumped into their van and sped off, leaving Tunde's lifeless body on the roadside. By morning, the news had spread across Ajegunle. People gathered, staring at the battered body of Tunde. His mother arrived at the scene, and when she saw her son lying lifeless, she let out a heart-wrenching scream. The police, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, quickly tried to cover up their crimes. At the station, the DPO, Chief Superintendent Lawal, gathered his officers and gave them strict orders. "We cannot afford bad publicity," he said. "We will say that the boy was an armed robber who was caught in the act and neutralized during an exchange of gunfire." A fabricated police report was released stating that Tunde was a notorious criminal who had been involved in a robbery and was shot while trying to escape. The previous night before they had left his body there, they planted an old rusty pistol near his body to strengthen their claims. But then, the people of Ajegunle knew better. They knew the truth. They knew that Tunde had been gruesomely murdered by these policemen. The police's attempt to tarnish Tunde's name only fueled the people's anger. The youth of Ajegunle were furious. They carried Tunde's body and marched towards the police station, chanting "No justice, no peace." The streets were filled with thousands of people, all demanding justice. Shops closed. People ran for safety. The crowd grew larger and the tension thickened. The police station became their target. Stones and bottles were hurled at the building. Some people even went ahead to set tires on fire, blocking major roads and making it impossible for vehicles to pass. The air was thick with smoke as flames rose high into the skies. The police tried to disperse the crowd by firing tear gas, but the people stood their ground. Then, the DPO, Chief Superintendent Lawal, made a fatal mistake. He stepped out of the station, attempting to calm the crowd. "This is a tragic incident," And we assure you that a full investigation. Before he could finish, a glass bottle flew through the air and smashed against his head. Blood dripped down his face as he stumbled back. His officers rushed to pull him inside the station while the crowd roared in anger. For this, Ajegunle was in chaos. The police station was surrounded. Nobody could pass through the market without raising his hands to show that they were unarmed. The situation was only brought under control when reinforcements arrived from Area B in Apapa and the army. But Iyatunde knew that the police would never punish their own. They had already started spreading lies, calling her son an armed robber. She could not let them get away with it. She had only one option left. Unknown to many, Iyatunde was a descendant of the water goddess, Yemoja. As a child, she had been warned never to seek the goddess' help unless she was ready to pay the price. But now, she had nothing to lose. One evening, she dressed in white and went to the shores of the Atlantic. She carried a white cat, its lifeless body cradled in her arms. As she stepped into the water, the waves moved as if they were listening. "Mother of the waters, I come for justice," she whispered. A deep voice echoed through the air. "What do you seek?" "I seek the death of those who took my son." The goddess agreed, but gave her a task. The task was simple yet chilling. Iyatunde must carry the dead cat through Ajegunle for 7 days. The city's energy, the lives it held, would accept this sacrifice and fuel the wrath that would soon follow. At the end of the week, she was to place the cat in front of the police station, sealing the fate of those who were responsible for her son's death. Iyatunde began the process immediately. As she walked, the street of Ajegunle, filled with life and chaos, became the backdrop of her silence. Airy rituals, people avoided her eyes, sensing the weight of her grief and the darkness she now carried. Day by day, the toll of the ritual seemed to press down on her, but she did not falter. The lives lost to injustice were her focus now, and nothing would stop her. On the 7th day, she placed the dead cat in front of the police station, marking the final step of her desperate plea for justice. The events that followed were swift and tragic. One by one, the policemen who killed Tunde met gruesome ends. Their deaths were slow, agonizing, and brought sufferings to their families. Sergeant Alade developed a mysterious disease. His skin rotted while he was still alive. His wife and children abandoned him because they could not stand the smell. He died, screaming in agony. While Corporal Okoro's son drowned mysteriously in their compound well, days later, Corporal Okoro himself was found hanging in his bedroom, his eyes wide open in terror. Inspector Bala, on the other hand, lost his entire family in a car accident. Overcome with grief, he began wandering the street like a madman, eating from the gutters until he was hit by a trailer. Constable James' wife and newborn fell sick and died within a week. He could not take the pain and shot himself in the head. ASP Danladi, the leader, had suffered the worst fate. His wife left him. His house caught fire mysteriously, and he was eventually found floating in the lagoon with his limbs twisted in an unnatural angle. Justice had been served, not by the law, but by the wrath of the waters. Iyatunde, who knew what had happened to the officers, did not celebrate. When the news of the policeman's death reached her, she did not smile nor cry. She simply sat in her small dark room, staring at the flickering flames of her kerosene lamp. The market women whispered about her, how she no longer shouted to call customers, how she moved like a shadow of herself. She did not even speak much, nor did she complain. She visited Tunde's grave every evening, pouring water on the soil, speaking softly to him as though he could hear. "My son, I did what I had to do," she would say. "You will never be forgotten." And when she walked back home, the street fell silent. The people of Ajegunle knew that she was no longer just Iyatunde. She was something more, something untouchable. Justice indeed had been served, not by the law, but by the wrath of the waters.